again for tuning into Functional Fitness. My name is Kevin St. Laurent, certified personal trainer. Today I'm actually going to go over the physiology of weight loss, the basics of physiology of weight loss. Next week I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine, a fellow personal trainer that I work with at the place that I'm at, and he is going to talk about the psychology of weight loss. The psychology of weight loss. Now, he is a wonderful personal trainer for one. I worked with him for a little bit. I learn things from him all the time. He and I we do disagree on some things, but it's an intelligent disagreement, and it's based on experience and research. And the only thing, and don't tell him I told you this, the only thing that I'm working with him is to make sure he talks at a reasonable pace because he talks quick. I told him that. I told him to talk slower. Now, I also mentioned before that I would like the show to run off from basically your questions. I would like you to email me or even call me. I don't mind. Even if it comes down to let's meet somewhere and talk about, whatever you want to talk about. I'm reasonable. I'm not going to charge you to meet somewhere or talk about something unless you want to meet up in Augusta or something. That's a different story. Now, I did, however, receive one question that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. This gentleman, he is having a surgery. He has to have a surgery on the lateral aspect of his ankle. Well, actually a few things with his ankle, but I say lateral. Lateral just means the outside of the body. And a couple of the structures involved are called the peroneus longus and the peroneal brevis muscles. They run on the outside of the ankle. And his question to me, I guess, is how do I do stuff after the surgery? Or what can I do after the surgery? Or, along those lines. So I want to back up, actually, and take that question. One thing to be concerned about, I guess, is to be certain you tell your provider everything. My point is, it's better to prevent a surgery in the first place than to deal with it after the fact. So if you tell your provider everything, it doesn't matter if you say, walking makes me want to go to the bathroom. That kind of thing happens, actually, because activity stimulates the bowels and everything like that. But my point is, what doesn't matter to you, what you think might not be important, might matter to a healthcare provider. My point, I guess, with that is who are we to decide that, this isn't important enough to mention, so I'm not going to say anything about it. And lo and behold, it was important. It was certainly important enough to mention. Now, as far as what can you do after the surgery, hopefully there's going to be physical therapy to rehab those structures. Now, the peroneus brevis and longus, they actually take the ankle. Can you tune in on my ankle? They actually take the ankle. They do these movements. Out, bring your ankle, called eversion, and down, called plantar flexion. It actually does those things. Now, in physical therapy, they're most likely going to address those. Now, one thing you can do, kind of a test we do, I guess, to determine ankle stability. This is not treatment, this is a test. Is to have the person run in a figure eight. And the reason we do that is because in a figure eight, if you think about it, you're testing ankle stability on both sides. So they can't really excuse me, they can't favor an ankle over another one. Okay, so hopefully you're going to have physical therapy anyway, and they're going to strengthen those movements. I mean, there are a bunch of different ways or a few different ways to strengthen those calf raises and stuff, but that's not something you jump into early. Remember, we talked about the principle of progression and stuff, and there's also the healing of these structures involved. But let physical therapy deal with that part. There's also, excuse me, something else. Now, you're probably going to be on crutches. I would only guess. I would think that you're going to be on crutches. So, I mean, that in itself would be an exercise. Not the greatest ones because you're going to have pressure up here. You could. Hopefully you don't. You know, you shouldn't lean on your crutches anyway, but your hands, calluses, blisters from using the crutches, that's going to be an exercise in itself. However, not a good one as far as I'm concerned. But my point is the crutches will help you get around. If you go to a gym, not every place has one, but there's something called a UBE, upper body ergometer. And a UBE is just an upper body bicycle. So you are able to get a cardiovascular workout in that way. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about me again. Now, I will not go through this every single episode, simply because after you, get to know me or tune into the show enough, you'll be sick and tired of hearing this stuff. But until you get to know me, I guess. Like I said, my name is Kevin St. Laurent. I am a certified personal trainer. I have a bachelor's degree in community health, and I minored in nutrition, and I also minored in exercise science. Now, in that program, I also have 2 other degrees, which I'll get to. But in that program, we studied a lot about, community involvement. Studied nutrition as a science. I took a class or classes specifically on behavior modification. That's a wonderful thing. It's how to change behaviors. And I studied exercise science and a whole bunch of other things. But my second degree was in physical therapy. Now here I studied kinesiology, therapeutic exercise, cardiology, neuroscience. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but a lot of rehabilitation. So I've worked with exercise on a therapeutic level. And my third degree is actually a bachelor's degree in nursing, where I studied advanced physiology, I took pharmacology, more of just how the body works in general, medical terminology and everything like that. Now, like I had explained, I'm actually going to talk, I have a marker in my hand here I keep playing with. I am going to talk to you about the science behind weight loss. Okay, so last week we talked about how to design an exercise program. This kind of goes somewhat hand in hand with that a little bit. Excuse me. I'm not going to get into the real boring stuff, the gluconeogenesis. If you need help sleeping sometime, I'll put on a program like that. But I'm going to talk about the different energy systems that the body uses. And these are energy systems. Now think about this. These are energy systems programmed into the body. Now we talk about evolution. Now these energy systems were programmed into the human body over time, because now think about back in the caveman days when you went through times of feast or famine. Sometimes you ate like a king, sometimes you didn't eat for several days. So your body is a very intelligent thing. Your body actually thinks of different ways it can survive. For example, actually, here's a really good example. there were two soldiers after World War II, after the concentration camps were liberated. These two gentlemen volunteered to be starved, not to death, but they volunteered to be starved. So starved to the point that these concentration camp survivors were. And what they found was, as they were starved, they became extremely efficient at preserving what they had left. So, in other words, what that means is they did a lot more sitting around and not moving. Their movements were only when they had to, do something. Now us, we'll do stuff, we'll waste movements, we'll put things away or, grab something or whatever. These people, they became extremely efficient at not moving. So, basically what I'm getting at is our body put these energy systems into place to fuel us through different activities, and I'm going to explain. Now the first one I guess I'll talk about is the ATP PC system. Okay, so that sounds kind of confusing, doesn't it? ATP just stands for adenosine triphosphate. PC just stands for phosphocreatine. Okay, this energy system, basically, it fuels simple movements like this. Like Olympic lifters would probably use that one. They would, whatever it takes, 1 to 3 reps. I think it's 10 seconds or less. You stay here. You stay in this energy system. So you'll use ATP, and what happens on the cellular level is you have an enzyme come in and break it down into what's called ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, and that sloughing off of that phosphate group creates energy, and there you have energy for the body. Now the next one I'm going to talk about is the lactic acid system. Okay, both of these, by the way, are what's called an anaerobic. These occur, anaerobic just means without oxygen. And this energy system, the lactic acid system, that fuels kind of intermediate activities such as, a 100-yard sprint, dash, or whatever, I think that's what they call it, 100-yard dash, that kind of thing. So if you need something slightly more prolonged, then this energy system will kick in. And the last one that I'm going to talk about, probably what I consider to be the most important one, is the oxygen system. Now the oxygen system, this one is aerobic. Now this is the one that is important when it comes to like weight loss. Well, we'll talk about that, I guess, because there's going to be a twist thrown into this. But the oxygen system, like I said, it is aerobic, so it uses oxygen while it is working. This one, and I will actually tie all these things in and show you how they were programmed into the body, back in the caveman days and everything like that. But this one, basically, what happens here is you trick, well, I don't know if trick's the right word, but you make your body start to use fat as its energy source. Instead of glucose, the sugar in the body, as energy, you start to use fat. You start to use primarily fat as your energy source. And this is, you really tap into this when you get into your prolonged cardio, much lower intensity, long duration. You're more likely to tap into that. Now, how are these programmed into the human body? Well, let's take a look. You have, like I said, you have the ATP PC system. That is basically your power. So if you need to, well, lift up a chair, boom, ATP. Now, ATP is the energy source. Phosphocreatine will actually replenish that and turn that back to an ATP. And phosphocreatine, if you've ever heard, phosphocreatine is, that's where they get the supplement name from, if you've ever heard the supplement creatine. This is where that comes from, and this is what they're hoping to target here, is the phosphocreatine system. So anyway, about the caveman, let's say you have to run across country to find food. You have to run 8 miles to find food. So what happens is your body is actually smart enough to use fat because, well, let's talk about fat for just a second. Fat is nothing more than stored energy. That's another thing that came from way back when, is we have the ability to store energy. So in order to store energy, your body has to, it has to basically have a place to put it. So it puts it here, either subcutaneous or intra-abdominal, which we'll talk about as well. So you run across country, your body is smart enough to tap into your fat as the energy source to run across country. And then when you get there, you run into a big grizzly bear and you have to fight off this grizzly bear. So what your body has done, your body's done a very smart thing. It's used fat because it takes a little longer to tap into. And it saved the good stuff, high octane nitrous oxide or whatever, to fight this grizzly bear, because you're not going to use fat to fight the grizzly bear unless you're fighting it for a really long time. Now this whole thing right here, this is just one theory when it comes to weight loss. Now the other one is, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of these shows called P90X and Insanity and everything like that. Now those shows work, and I'm going to tell you why, but I will also tell you the shortcomings of them. So shows like, oh, this pen will work, P90X or Insanity. Okay, why do they work? Because, well, let's take this as an example. If me and a marathon runner were to run 5 miles, who do you think would burn more calories? I would burn more calories. Why would I burn more calories? Because I am extremely inefficient at running. I'm not a trained runner. Trained runners have the hand motion down right. They have the breathing technique down, which only trained runners have this certain breathing pattern. So they are extremely efficient. Me, I am not. I'm not all that efficient when it comes to, running long distance. Now, so much so that they've done research before, they've done research on a marathon runner, And as soon as the marathon runner stepped on a treadmill, they tapped into this. They started to burn fat as their energy source as soon as they touch. Why is that? Because they are extremely efficient. So when it comes to these, the biggest thing that makes these things work the most is if you can force the body to work in a very inefficient manner, you are going to burn more calories. So if I took off running down the street doing this, I would burn more calories because this is inefficient. My body's not used to it. I'm not used to doing this. Now, what they have done is they have, you know, if you listen to the commercials, and I am not bad mouthing these by any means. If you listen to the commercial, a lot of these people have dance backgrounds. So what they have done is they've put it into a nice structured format, but yet inefficient. So you're forcing the body to work inefficiently. However, putting it into a very structured routine. Now, the shortcomings of it, from what I've read in research, and I can't exactly explain it on the physiological level right now, but from what I've read in research, it tends to be less long-term. This method tends to be long-term. This tends to be quick. So if you look into these programs, they tell you you're going to lose weight in a very short period of time. Most likely, you will. But to receive the benefits, the health benefits, and the health benefits go on, you know, they're endless. Increased risk of diabetes, heart disease, stroke. Could list off a bunch of them. This is where you need to be, actually right here. This is where you need to be. These other ones are important too, but this is what I want you to understand, I guess, is the oxygen system. Now, here's the major twist in all of this. Hold on, I'm going to erase this. I might end up writing something else. Now, the major twist in all this is you hear people talk a lot about which is better, cardiovascular training or muscular training or muscle training. Now, last week I had mentioned if I had only one exercise I could give to a person, that would be walking. And if I could give them one exercise to do every single day for the rest of their lives, walking would be it, and I still stand true to that now. Because like I said, it's functional, it's aerobic, it taps into that oxygen system. But when it comes to burning fat, when it comes to burning fat, a muscular contraction, like I had already explained the energy systems. Now, when it comes to burning fat, I don't know, I think I had explained at some point that your mitochondria is where the Krebs cycle happens. And that's where the ATP becomes ADP and all that good stuff. Now, the thing with that, I'm trying to think of how to best describe this. The oxygen system happens in the mitochondria, in the cell membrane. Where are those mitochondria? Well, most of them are in muscle. The skeletal muscle has a pretty decent amount of them. So, in other words, if you don't build muscle, where is this going to take place? So, that's why the two of them put together, muscular training and cardiovascular training, that's definitely the way to go, if you can. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is intra-abdominal fat. I mentioned that a while ago. You have subcutaneous, this stuff on the surface that you can pinch, but you also have that intra-abdominal. If you've ever seen somebody who, well, basically they have a big belly, but that belly is very firm. That's called intra-abdominal fat. And intra-abdominal fat is the fat inside the belly, around your organs, and it descends. So a person who appears thin can still be extremely unhealthy. Their intra-abdominal is also sometimes called the hidden fat, because you can't see it sometimes unless it's really distended. But I've read in one research article recently that the way to actually target this, and I'm not even sure why, but the way to target that is through strength training. But I still strongly advise people to do strength training and cardiovascular training as well. That's, I wanted to get across the energy systems. That's what I really wanted to get across today. Like I said, I have a good friend of mine coming. He's going to talk about the psychology of weight loss. And the psychology of weight loss, now he and I have talked a lot about this. We have different ideas of things we're going to do. Like I said, I could give you the talk on the psychology of weight loss, but I honestly believe his talk will be better. He is a very good trainer. And it's basically around the idea, like I had mentioned before, some people they were taught to finish everything on their plates. Empty your plate. That's just what you're taught. So one thought I have to that, like I had mentioned before, is get smaller plates. Seems like a really goofy idea. And no, I don't think that's going to solve your problem. But if it solves 0.25% of your problem, that's a little more than you were, a little better than you were before. So if that is an issue, if portion control is an issue, that's just something to possibly keep in the back of your head somewhere. But he's going to get into, I'm pretty sure he'll get into things like the social aspect of eating, which is just phenomenal. I had never thought of it actually until I started talking to him. Like I said, I don't know everything, but I know I can identify without a doubt. I can identify a good trainer. And he is a good trainer. His name is Stu. Forgive me if I say this wrong. Stu Posternak, I think is his last name. He'll be coming next week, and I think I'm going to interview him. So if there are specific questions about that you would like to ask, feel free. Again, I would like to thank you very much for tuning into Functional Fitness. Again, my name is Kevin St. Laurent, a certified personal trainer. I also have, like I had mentioned before, but I'm going to say it again, I have a bachelor's degree in community health with a minor in nutrition and a minor in exercise science. I have an associate's degree in physical therapy and a bachelor's degree in nursing. So by all means, if you have questions, please email me. I really, really, really want your questions. And I will answer them. I will not diagnose anybody, but I will give you my opinion of what you should do, what you might be looking for, or whatever. Just please send me your questions. I want your questions. Thank you very much. See you next time.